The summilux-tl 35mm f1.4 and the Sigma 30mm f1.4 DCDN are the only two 50mm equivalent lenses for Leica CL. There's not a lot to choose from, so the decision should be easy, but I think there is a lot to consider before going for either David or Goliath. Is the smaller and cheaper going to win over the big and pricey? Let's get the obvious differences out of the way first. The Sigma lens does not have the same design language as the Leica CL or TL2 for that matter, but does not look bad on the camera itself. It's made from a combination of plastic and metal, which contributes to the low weight, despite housing 9 lens elements. The focusing ring has a groove rubber sleeve, which is easy to find by touch when focusing manually. With the Leica CL, the Sigma 30mm lens creates a very nice compact package. The lens is light and the whole setup is well balanced. The only downside for me is how easy it is to turn the focusing ring. Maybe it's just my version of this lens, but the relative looseness makes it more difficult to adjust focus in small increments. I'm sure I will get used to it eventually, but more resistance would be nice. The summilux-tl 35mm lens is 4 years older in terms of release date, but even back in 2015 this lens was built like a tank. All metal with massive front glass element. The lens diameter is almost the same as its length, and you can feel all of this every time you pick it up. So it's not compact and definitely not light. It makes the Leica CL front heavy and the camera can't be comfortably used without the additional grip. Focusing ring is wide and easy to find. I have no complaints about its resistance either. On top of that, we get the additional feature that the slower you turn the focusing ring, the less correction is applied to focus distance, and it works very well. But both of these lenses have built-in autofocus, and here is where I see differences too. The Sigma lens tends to hunt for focus. It's not slow, not at all. The focus always locks securely. But before it gets there, you get this weird movement when the focus point goes first slightly beyond your subject, then in front of it, and only after this movement it lands the focus on the subject itself. This all happens fast and doesn't slow me down, but can be distracting. Maybe something that could be sorted with a firmware update, but my CL is fully updated and it's still happening. But overall, the Sigma lens autofocus is very usable and I'm really only nitpicking here. The Leica 35TL lens autofocus is fast and reliable, every time. The lens autofocus used to be criticized in early reviews, but we are in 2022 and on Leica CL with the latest firmware, this lens is snappy and reliable. One more difference to point out is the actual focal length of both lenses. The Sigma will give you 45mm focal length in full frame equivalent and Leica lens 52.5mm to be exact. This is the first difference we will see in the wall art test shots. The second one is visible distortion of the Sigma 30mm focal length. These two are the main differences worth considering, and they can also be the only differences you will see in real life photos, but we will get to that a little bit later. By going down the rabbit hole of pixel peeping, you will see that Leica 35TL lens is evenly sharp across the frame, even at f1.4. Sigma is a little bit softer in corners and improving when stopped down. This is hardly the reason to go for the Leica lens. The real reason would be its slightly longer focal length and zero distortion. That's why this lens is very good for portraits and product photos while still retaining the focal length of a classic 50mm general purpose lens. Sigma lens at its 45mm is more suited for the role of a walk-around lens, especially because of its smaller size and low weight. So knowing all this now, can you tell these two lenses apart when in real-world use? I believe you noticed that all the photos showcased in this video have letters assigned to them. I hope you have been taking notes, because I'm going to reveal the results now. And although it may be easy to say which photo was taken with what camera, it is very nice to see how close the Sigma is to the summilux-tl in the real world. So now, when you've seen it all, what is your pick? Can you make the decision when on one hand you have a low price combined with decent performance, and on the other the best lens you can buy for this system, but for a price that feels inflated? I think the hardest part here is not the decision itself, to go for one lens or another, but to understand what type of photographer you are. What do you like? What will be your use case for a 50mm equivalent lens? Maybe you are only experimenting with this focal length and then Sigma is your big number one. Or maybe you know that 50mm is how you see the world and then it's easier to digest the price of 35TL. But what if you are not going to use it enough? Maybe you continue to find yourselves in a situation where you need a zoom lens or a wide prime and 50mm focal length is only for those rare times when you take pictures just for yourself. Then the Sigma would make more sense, right? Let me just tell you that it's perfectly okay to want the best of the best, even if it's just because you can afford it or that you always wanted it. Because you want performance equal to the legendary 35mm summilux-tl lens but with autofocus. In this case, the 35TL is your lens and you will not be disappointed. For everyone else, there is the trusted and well-performing Sigma 30mm DCDM. But if you are still undecided, you need to check out these two videos where I share more information about each of these lenses, go into detail and showcase a lot more photographs I've taken with them.